Hi, welcome to another IELTS essay writing video. This video is a follow-up to an exercise that I posted to my blog a few days ago. In the exercise, students were asked to fill in the blanks with suitable words. The blanks appeared in a sample IELTS essay. In total, we had, I believe, 22 students participate. So thanks for getting involved, guys. I hope the exercise proves helpful to you. So before we get to the essay itself and the correct answers, let's just go over the essay question that this response was written for. The question is, should children go to nursery school prior to their primary studies? Share personal examples in your essay if applicable. Okay, now I'm going to read through the essay and I'll pause where the blanks are, and I'll stick in the correct answers. And then following that, I'll go back and address each of the 22 students that submitted answers and go over some of your responses, because there were several students who came up with alternative ways to word these blanks. And I think it would be helpful for everyone if we go over these and just, just review a couple of ways that of alternative ways that we can structure these sentences. So the essay reads, in most countries today, children attend some form of preschool before engaging their studies at primary school. Although many feel this is an ideal arrangement, this essay will argue that a strong familial environment at home can replace the need for a child to attend nursery school. This will be shown by analyzing how the skills needed for elementary studies can be taught at home, and how having additional time with parents can help strengthen a child's sense of. Okay, and the correct answer here, or I shouldn't say it's the only correct answer, it was the answer that I had in the original essay, a child's sense of family. Okay, and now several students come up with alternative wordings, which we'll review later. The important thing to remember here is that this is the outline sentence, so this word would have to be something to do with family, because the second paragraph the second supporting paragraph in the essay addresses the importance of creating a strong union between parents and their children. Okay, so I get the impression that maybe some students, they read to this point and then they answered right away without reading the rest of the essay first, and unfortunately that would probably lead you to choose an incorrect word, or a word that wouldn't fit with the whole essay. It could be grammatically correct, but just wouldn't fit with what the rest of the essay is talking about. For one, many of the skills a child develops in preschool can be taught by parents. For example, when my nephew was 3, sharing was one of the main topics the very young were expected to have upon entry into primary school. Okay, and I had written mastered in the original essay. Students came up with several other wordings for this, which is great. We'll go over those a little bit later. And for some reason in this version of the essay, this does not appear in quotes, so just do that quickly. Despite not having attended preschool, my nephew finished his kindergarten years at the top of his class and was given a special award for his particularly strong sense of sharing. This example makes it clear that nursery school attendance should not be assumed a precursor to success in elementary school. Okay, so we can see how this discussion sentence is sort of linking the example to the idea that very, very young children do not need to go to nursery school to be able to engage their elementary studies successfully. Okay, in addition to this, preschool-aged children are forced to engage the world of academia before they have had a chance to properly with their parents. Okay, and the word that I used in the original essay was, bond. And there were several alternatives that came up in the responses that students provided. But in my personal opinion, I think bond is the best. And when we go through the other responses, I'll explain in more detail why. So bond with their parents. For instance, a study in the U.S. recently revealed a link between preschool attendance and childhood feelings of abandonment. As this report shows, a clear link appears to exist in many cases between nursery school students and subpar parental relations. Thus, encouraging the very young to attend preschool studies may not be as positive a course of action as many think. Following this look at how parents can both set an academic foundation and establish stronger relations with their children, the conclusion can be drawn that nursery schools do not need to be attended prior to primary studies. Okay, this is another link back to our thesis and very clear link back to our essay question. It is hoped parents the world over recognize that education and childhood development extend the classroom. Okay, and this would obviously be a word to do with sort of outside. The word I had in my original essay was beyond, and I think most of the students that submitted responses were able to come up with that. Okay, so that was the original essay. That doesn't mean it's the most the only correct way to write it. We're going to see a couple other ways that worked. But that's the way it was written originally. Okay, now let me just go back and put these blanks back in. I guess I'm going to have to keep quoting that. Okay. And, okay, now let's try fitting in a couple of student responses. So the first to respond to the blog post was Dennis. And Dennis decided to word this with curiosity. And I think that curiosity actually doesn't work. I don't think that's a good word to use here because it's not really what the subject of the second supporting paragraph is. So I think that curiosity would probably not be a good choice for this portion here. The second blank, okay, the very young were expected to have, now Dennis came up with obtained. And I think that works very nicely. So well done, Dennis. To have obtained upon entry into primary school. The third blank, Dennis had communicate. Okay. Now, so this was talking about young people and their parents. Now, communicate is a word that works grammatically, but I just don't feel as though it's a deep enough word when we're talking about the relationship between a child and their parents. So it's not only that they've had the opportunity to learn to properly communicate with their parents. It's more the creating of some sort of a deeper union or a bond or something between the children and their parents. So in my opinion, I don't think communicate would be the kind of word that we're looking for here. And for the final blank, Dennis came up with, let's see here. Okay, extend. Let's see, I'm just looking at my notes here. Over. Extend over the classroom. Now, several other students used the word over, and this is also incorrect. That I'm not even sure really what that means. Over the classroom. No, we're talking about extend. You could maybe use outside the classroom. That might work, but over would not be the correct answer here. Okay, so thanks for those responses, Dennis. And you've shared a great word, obtained, that maybe other students will make note of. Okay, now let's go to the second person that submitted. This is Ravshan. Ravshan shared the word belonging. So to help strengthen a child's sense of belonging, he also shared the word companionship. Companionship. I think that these entries are both very good. I think that the one thing would be just to try to link them more to the relationship between the parents and the child, because just the child's sense of belonging, it doesn't clearly. I mean, even though we're saying here additional time with parents can help strengthen the child's sense of belonging. We're more sort of talking about belonging within a family or companionship within a family. So if there would be some way that you could word that a bit more to kind of link it, more tightly with the second supporting paragraph, I think that would be ideal. But that said, though, both of these words, are grammatically correct, and they are kind of in the realm of what we're talking about here. Okay, the second word Ravshan came up with was developed. So main topics the very young were expected to have developed, which I think works very well. Good job. And he also shared the word learnt, which also works. So good job there. Oh, and he shared a third word. The third word was familiarized. Now, I don't think familiarized works all that well here. If you were to change it to familiarized themselves with upon entry into, then that would be all right. But just familiarized would be awkward. Okay, let's see here. Let's continue on. Okay, and so here we're talking about before they had a chance to properly. Ravshan also chose the word communicate, which we've talked about before, and he also shared get along. Get along with. Now, get along is not. I don't think this would be a phrase we would use to talk about the relationship between a child and their parents. Get along is more sort of like I get along with my colleagues, or I get along with my friends, or I get along. It's we use it maybe for professional relationships, or not just professional, maybe with friends as well. But a parent-child relationship when the children are small. I don't know if we'd use get along to talk about that relationship or not. So I don't think this would be a fitting phrase. It's grammatically correct, but it wouldn't be what we're looking for here. Okay, and Ravshan shared over for the final word, which we've already talked about. Dennis had over as well. I don't think that would be what we're looking for in this part here. Okay, thanks for sharing those, Ravshan. Now, the third person who shared a phrase with us, who shared words with us, was Samindra. And Samindra's first word was so strengthen a child's sense of bonding. Okay. Now, I don't think it's the sense of bonding that the child is strengthening. It's more maybe the sense of bond, but with the parents or something like that. But the sense of bonding, I don't think that fits properly here. The second word Samindra shared with us was shared. So main topics the very young were expected to have shared upon entry into primary school. No, because these young people they're not really sharing it. It's more they're absorbing it, or they're learning it, or they're mastering it. So shared would not be a correct word here. Let's see. Okay, the next word Samindra had was attached. Okay, are forced to engage the world of academia before they have had a chance to properly attached. Now, firstly, this is grammatically incorrect. If you wanted to use the verb attach, we'd have to put it like this, to properly attach with their parents. And again, I don't think attach would be the correct language we want to use here. They're not really attaching with their parents. I think the word you were looking for, Samindra, was bond. And in that case, you would have been correct, because we can use bond to talk about relationships between people, but attach is awkward a little bit. You wouldn't say, you might say I am attached to my brother, but I attach with my brother. No, that doesn't make any sense at all. And Samindra, for the final word, she shared beyond, which was the same as I had in my original essay. So that is a good choice of word there. So thank you for that, Samindra. Next person was Ruth. Let's see. Now, Ruth's blank for the outline sentence, she filled with learning, in terms of social and academic skills. Okay, so let me just take the sentence from up here. And how having additional time with parents can help strengthen a child's sense of learning in terms of social and academic skills. Okay. I don't think here, though, we wouldn't say a sense of learning. It's not really strengthening the child's sense of learning. You might, if we could take this away, but this would take away part of the original essay, but a child's social and academic skills, that might work. So you might say with parents can help strengthen a child's social and academic skills. Okay, that might fit with the remainder of the essay. But the way it was worded there, Ruth, I don't think we would be able to use it, because the second paragraph is not really talking about strengthening their sense of learning. It's more talking about strengthening their relationship with the parents and how that is good for them in the long term. Now, Ruth came up with her remaining answers were all correct. A new one here Ruth came up with was been taught. Okay, so the very young were expected to have been taught upon entry into primary school. That works fine. Regarding the parental relationship, so properly spend time with their parents. That's okay. Not super academic sounding, but it works. And then Ruth came up with beyond for her final answer, and that works too. Okay, so thanks for those, Ruth. Next student was Anna. For the outline sentence, let me see, what have I... Oh, okay, Anna had belonging. Okay, so it can help strengthen a child's sense of belonging. That works fine. Would be nice if it could connect maybe a little more tightly regarding family, so maybe belonging to a family or something like that. For the second word, Anna shared... Let's go to our next one here. We're expected to have achieved. Okay, achieved. Let's see. Yeah, it's not so much that they have achieved the topic the way that it's worded here. So sharing was one of the main topics the very young were expected to have achieved. I suppose it works. It might be better to word it something like achieved an understanding of. So the very young were expected to have achieved an understanding of upon entry into. That would be a little bit clearer. But it works the way it is here. And then, let's see, Anna had beyond for her... Oh, sorry, I'm missing one here. The interact, which we already talked about, for the relationship between parents and children. That works fine. And beyond for the final word. Okay, so thanks for those, Anna. Okay, next person who submitted answers was Tom. And now Tom submitted the word affection. So strengthen a child's sense of affection, which I think is in the realm of what we're looking for. I just don't think it's quite in keeping, with what the second supporting paragraph is all about. So I would say that this is not a good choice for wording at this part. Now, the second place, I didn't quite understand, Tom, what you meant by when you wrote chance. So, topics the very young were expected to have chance upon entry into primary school. I'm not sure what that means exactly, but it's I can tell you it's not the correct choice of word here. And then the next word was time. So, to properly time with their parents. Yeah, it doesn't, we need a verb here, so that wouldn't work. And then unfortunately, Tom, your fourth suggestion was over for the final sentence, and we've already talked about that. That wouldn't work either. So, but thank you for those, Tom. I appreciate that. Henry, Henry's word here was confidence. So parents can help strengthen a child's sense of confidence. And I think that does work because that's what we're talking about, sort of building a foundation for the kids before they go to school. Um, the that paragraph does sort of, talk more about the kind of relationship between the children and the parents. But I think the word confidence would work here. Maybe you were going for something like family security. When you say confidence, maybe you meant more that the children feel that they have a foundation of family behind them, and this gives them confidence. So perhaps a better phrase would have been a child's sense of family security or familial security. Okay, just a suggestion. Okay, let's see. Sharing was one of the main topics the very young were expected to have, and Henry suggested developed, which works fine. We talked about that already. Okay, and Henry, the rest of your answers we've talked about before. Your next answer was communicate, and your final answer was beyond, and we said that those would also be okay. So thanks for that, Henry, very much. Okay, the next student was, I believe it's pronounced me, M-I-I, and this student suggested belongings. Now, please be careful here because belongings, this is talking about the possessions that a person owns. So, for example, my wallet, my clothes, my umbrella, these things are my belongings. So I think the word you're looking for here is belonging, and we've talked about this word already before. Okay, me, you also suggested the word educate here. So main topics, the very young were expected to have educate. Educate. This would not work here. The young are not educating other people. It's more that they are being educated. So as we had other people suggest before, a word like learn or learnt or mastered or something like that would be fitting here. Educate would not be a correct answer. Okay, and then the next thing that me submitted was staying. So to properly staying. Um, okay. Here, so the verb should be in base form, so this should be to properly stay with their parents. But then again, the word stay doesn't fit either because what do you mean stay? You mean I don't know really. It's very awkward. So stay would not be the right answer here. And then me, the last word you suggested was over for the final sentence, and we've already talked about that. That would be incorrect as well. Okay, but thank you for those. Next student was Abdullah. Now, Abdullah suggested empathy or empathize. I've written in my notebook empathy, but I believe it was empathize the way you submitted it. Or could have, let me leave it the way I've written it in my notebook. I probably wrote it correctly there. So strengthen a child's sense of empathy. Now in the second paragraph, I'm not sure where you see anything to do with the child empathizing. For the well-being of another person, or so I don't think this would be the correct word. Grammatically correct, but not really in keeping with what this essay is going on about. Abdullah, you suggested the word it here, so to have it. And I think what's going on here, I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that, but I believe you're referring to, so sharing was one of the main topics the very young were expected to have it. For some reason, I believe you're referring back to the sharing, which you don't have to do. Here we're talking more about that sharing was a skill that had been absorbed or mastered by the child. I'm sorry. So it would not really be a fitting word here. It's also grammatically incorrect. Okay, Abdullah, you suggested be for our next part here. So have had a chance to properly be with their parents. And this works actually fine, but it's not a very descriptive word. It doesn't give us a feeling for what sort of relationship or what sort of interaction or what sort of engagement that the child has had with their parents. So so be works. It's probably not the best choice, but it is grammatically okay, and it does fit with what we're talking about. And for your final sentence, you suggested the word in. So to extend in the classroom, I think a couple of students suggested the word in or inside. This would not work. We're not talking about something, being retained inside the class. We're talking more about it, spreading to other places. So not a correct choice there. Thank you for those, Abdullah. Okay, the next student was, I believe it's pronounced Joby, or Joby, Joby. So Joby, you suggested self-esteem. That also fits in with the student that was suggesting the word confidence before. And I think that these work. Maybe, it would be nice if you could tie it a bit closer to the idea of family. And see, I think what these students are getting at is they're talking about children having that sense of a strong family foundation, and this is what is giving them self-esteem and giving them confidence. So maybe we could just be a little bit clearer when we're using, when we're going after these sorts of ideas. Okay, Joby also suggested the word achieve for the second part there, which we've already talked about. Now, for the third blank, Joby had a few suggestions, and I want to talk about these. Okay, so before the children had a chance to properly, now Joby's suggestion was mingle, to mingle with their parents. Now, mingle is a verb we use to talk about, people when they are interacting with each other. It is sort of informal. I would use the word mingle to talk about a dinner party, for example. So I mingled with my friends at a dinner party, or it's sort of to talk and interact with people that you know, but maybe you don't know very well. So it's that sort of word. So I don't think it would be a fitting word to talk about the relationship between a child and a parent. I mean, if you use the word mingle, it's almost comical because it makes me think, that the baby is interacting with the parent as if it were an adult, or the child's interacting with the parent as if it were an adult. So mingle is not the right choice here. I think, Joby, you suggested another word, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, you also suggested attach, which we've talked about before. So attach, the word you're looking for there, Joby, is bond, not attach. And the third word you suggested was interact, and we've already mentioned that interact would be an okay choice there. So to properly interact with their parents, maybe not the best choice, but it would work. And then you suggested beyond for your closing sentence, which would work fine. Okay, next student was Salmon, and Salmon, your first word was a sense of security. Okay, now again, I think that you're in the camp with confidence and self-esteem and security, and the security that comes from these sorts that comes from a strong family foundation. So security it works. It's just we want to tie this a bit more closely to family. Okay, and for the second part here, so we're expected to have, and so Salmon, you had suggested been developed. So sharing was one of the main topics. The very young were expected to have been developed. That's not grammatically correct. We would say we're expected to have developed. That would work fine. Okay. And here, children are forced to engage the world of academia before they have had a chance to properly enjoy the life with their parents. Now, enjoy the life would not be correct. We could change it to enjoy life with their parents. The only thing is that this is not very academic sounding. It just doesn't sound like something you would write in a university essay. So I'm going to say that that's not a good choice of words here. And the final phrase that Salmon shared with us for the closing was had to start before. Had to start before the classroom, and I'm not sure what that means exactly. It's grammatically incorrect, and it doesn't fit here at all. So unfortunately, a wrong answer. Aaron is the next student, and Aaron, you submitted 4 words that I think all work. So good for you. I think you're the only student that was able to do that. The first word you submitted was belonging, which we've talked about before. Probably should have some sort of attachment to family of some kind, but the remaining 3 all worked fine. Your second word was learnt, which worked fine. Bond, which was the original word, and I believe you're the only one that suggested the original word for that section, bond. So good for you. and beyond, which we've talked about before. So all four work. Good job there. Mr. Bushra. Mr. Bushra, the first word you submitted was empathy. And we've talked about empathy before. Not the right choice for this portion of the essay. Second word you submitted was obtain, which we've also talked before about. It's not, it should be in its past participle, which would be obtained. So not the perfect choice there, but the vocabulary word is fine. If you had it as obtained, that works great. The third word, phrase that you suggested here was get on. Now, get on, did we talk about this? I thought another student had submitted get on. Anyway, get on is more sort of an informal way to refer to a friendly relationship between people. So, I get on with my colleagues. It's probably not the best choice for this. It works grammatically. I mean, I guess a child could get on with their parents, but it's not typically a word we would use to talk about the relationship between a young person and an adult. So not the best choice there. And your final word was beyond, and that works fine. Thank you for those, Mr. Bushra. Oh, okay. I'm going back too far. Okay. Kate was the next student, and Kate's suggestion was a sense of educating. Sense of educating. Unfortunately, that word would not work here. It's not grammatically correct. You could say a child's sense of education, but even that, I'm not sure if that really fits with what we're talking about in the second supporting paragraph. But your other submissions were fine. Your second submission is acquired, which is a word we haven't seen yet. And so students were expected to have acquired upon entry into primary school. That works fine. Thank you for that new submission. Interact was the next word, and beyond, so those work as well. So thank you for those, Kate. Okay, Anderson. Anderson suggested curiosity, which we've talked about already. That's not what we want to be talking about here. His second suggestion was developed. So the students were expected to have developed these skills before they had entered primary school. That works fine, good for you. And Anderson, interact, and beyond are your remaining responses, and those also work. So good job there. Next student is Tiara. Tiara, her first response was love and caring for others, which I think is just another way of saying affection, which was a submission by an earlier student. And I don't think that's quite what we're looking at here. So I'm going to say that that's not a good choice of words for this section. Your second answer was learned. That's fine. The third submission was to properly engaged. And again, this should be in base form, so engage. Engage with their parents. Again, I don't probably engage. Probably not a word we would use to talk about. I mean, I guess it makes sense. It does. It's not as strong as even interact. So I'm going to say that's an incorrect choice. To be honest, I don't think it really reflects the sort of relationship that we want to make clear in this portion of the essay. And your final word was beyond, which works fine. It seems that everybody got that last one, beyond. Good for you all. Okay, let's get back to it here. Okay, Tiara. Next student was, it's EIEI, which might be pronounced II. And the students thought perhaps security and belonging. So a child's sense of security and belonging. We've talked about these words before. The correct realm, but just needs a bit more relationship to the family. Acquainted was the second choice. So main topics, the very young were expected to have acquainted. Oops. Acquainted. No, that doesn't work. That doesn't make sense. They're not Yeah, just we can't use that word. Third word interact and fourth word beyond are fine. Thank you for those, I. And, okay, getting back to the last couple of students here. Okay. Student R&D. Okay, now the first one here is a child's sense of being, which I suppose works. We've talked about this one though before. I mean, it should be, you know, a little bit more closely related to the family. The second word you shared was build, to have build. And don't forget that here we should be using our past participles. This should be to have built. So the main topics, the very young, were expected to have built. I don't know if it would work. I mean, you might be more referring to a word like garnered. So the main topics to garner, the main skills the students are expected to have garnered. That would work better. Okay, R&D, you suggested the word bonded for the third, which it should be bond, not bonded. And beyond is fine, your final submission there. Thank you for those R&D. Solly, S-O-L-L-Y. Okay, let's see, family, relationship, and sharing. So family, relationship, and sharing. So here we have, okay, and how having additional time with parents can help strengthen a child's sense of family, relationship, and sharing. Now, I don't know why you're using sharing here, because this ties awkwardly into the first example that we share, you know, in the essay. So we don't want to do that. And sense of family relationship, and sense of, yeah, just the relationship kind of makes it a bit awkward there. But I think you're in the right realm. Okay. Now, your second suggestion was when they reach. When they reach. Okay, the very young were expected to have when they reach upon entry. Expected to have. Okay, sharing was one of the main topics the very young were expected to have when they reach upon entry. And I mean, I know what you're trying to do here, but you'd have to change some of the original wording of the essay. So sharing was one of the main topics the very young were expected to have. Okay, yeah. To have reached, maybe, something like that. So to have reached upon entry into primary school, you'd have to change things around to make that work. But here it could, you know, be plausible. Let's see here. And then your next word was interact, and your final word was beyond. Those work. Okay. Thank you for those, Soli. Bega. Yeah, your first word was curiosity. We've talked about that already. Not the right choice. Your second word was developed. That works fine. We've talked about that one too. Your third word was engaged, which we've talked about. That's probably not where we want to go at this point. Better words would be like interact. And your fourth word is beyond, and that's correct. So thank you for those, Baga. Vikram. Okay, the first word was belonging, which we've talked about already. Second word was learnt, which is fine. The third word was attach, which again we've talked about. It's kind of awkward. I think the word you're looking for there is bond. And the fourth word you shared was beyond, which is correct. Good for you, Vikram. Thank you for sharing those. And Zial Huda, your first phrase was sense of humor. So strengthening a child's sense of humor. Now, of course, we repeat sense almost, you know, right after each other, so that makes it kind of awkward. Sense of humor, I don't know what you mean by that. If you mean that they're learning how to become more humorous people or funnier people. I don't know if that's really where we want to go here. Let me see. You also suggested, okay, we're expected, okay, to have experienced. Sharing was one of the many topics the very young were expected to have. Okay, sorry. I see you repeated a few of the words ahead of time. To have experienced upon entry into primary school. Yeah, that's good. Except that we're not just talking about them experiencing it. It's more, them being able to, that they have already been taught it and they have absorbed it and they are able to reapply it. So here, I think experience would not be really the exact word that we want. We want to more, show that they have developed these skills themselves and are able to execute them on their own. So not the right choice there. And then the last two, I was a little bit confused by. You suggested the word mix, to properly mix with their parents. I think that this also fits in with the word mingle. It's more of a word we would talk about to define maybe the social interactions between adults, not so much between between an adult and a child. So not the right choice there. And then your final word, in, would not work here as well. And I think we've talked about this before. We're talking more about this kind of going out and into the world rather than just being sort of retained in the classroom. So that's the end of the exercise. Thank you very much to those of you that got involved and submitted answers. I hope the way that I presented this and analyzed your answers wasn't too confusing. Please, give me some feedback. Let me know how this worked and if it's helpful or not. And good luck with your studies, and thank you for watching.